Well, there's so many social cuts being done in all our countries. The NATO leaders will meet tomorrow to decide to even spend more of our money, our tax money, to go and have wars in different countries. We all know why. It's not to bring democracy, but it's to be able to have as many control of markets in the world, economic markets.
We share our friend's view that NATO is the armed wing of imperialism and threatens the whole world, and for that it must be dissolved. The fact that we draw attention to the extension of NATO's destructive influence to stress its presence and workings in Latin America is telling of the lengths to which this war machine goes in attempting to impose its power all over the planet. In solidarity with all peoples harmed, massacred or threatened, whose countries were destroyed and sovereignty violated, from Yugoslavia to Libya, Afghanistan to Somalia, Sudan and so on, Sabra Paz joins all who denounce the pretext invented by the imperialist and hegemonic powers, such as the promotion of security, even if under the conceptual development of a so-called human security, and humanitarian intervention, with the so-called responsibility to protect or humanitarian assistance, often presented as per request of some government or governmental organization, which is supposed to paint devastating military operations, intervention, and offensive presence with a layer of legitimacy.
We have gathered here today peace movements from all over the world to join our voices in favor of peace and against war. Yet another NATO summit is taking place in which imperialists are preparing their next moves and the next regions they will attempt to destabilize. NATO's role since its establishment in 1949 has been nothing else than criminal attacks and interventions all over the world. It is well known that NATO was established, as said then, in order to protect the democratic West against the communist threat. A big truth is that the foundation of NATO, a few years after the Second World War, actually marked the beginning of Europe's militarization and the undermining of socialist countries. Foundation of NATO inaugurated the endless list of intervention and assaults against sovereign states, the fostering of military coups, the dictatorships in Latin America, the countless assassinations, and the mankind bloodshed.
To be very brief, let me tell you that we as the Czech Peace Movement today struggle also against the attempts of the pro-NATO and pro-imperialist political forces in our country, from right-wing parties, from the Social Democracy and so on, who try to change Czech constitution in favor of transfer of the responsibility about possible sending of Czech military troops to other countries, because today the parliament has to approve it, and they would like to change the constitution that this parliamentary approval is not necessary.
Dear friends and comrades, just a few days ago, the Syriza-ANEL government, continuing the policy of New Democracy and PASOK, and also of other political parties in Greece, passed the harshest of all memoranda, the fourth memorandum, with new cuts, imposing new unbearable measures on the people, new cuts in wages and pensions, further reduction of the tax threshold, mass dismissals, while giving provocative privileges to the big capital. At the same time, and in the context of the same anti-people, pro-capital and pro-imperialism policies, and in the context of the geostrategic upgrading on behalf of the Greek capital, the Syriza-ANEL government fully endorses the war plans of NATO and the European Union and escalates its involvement. Greece's military spending of 2.38% of GDP is second only to that of the United States of America, with 3.61 among all member states of NATO.
We, the Nepalese people, denounce war and all attempts of war and aggression against people and hegemonic invasion by big and powerful nations. We believe that there needs an organized effort for global prosperity and cooperation, not the war and aggression. Therefore, we, Peace and Solidarity Council of Nepal, calls the dissolution of NATO immediately, stopping its financing and returning from all illegally invaded zones, We call to return back the land and the rights of the peoples to themselves that has been forcefully occupied, for choosing their government in peace and freedom without any fear of war, exploitation and threat.
Trump's statement in Saudi Arabia and in Israel threatening Iran were clearly designed to demonstrate the change in the tact of US military strategy in the region. Since the beginning of the global economic crisis of capitalism in 2008, we have seen imperialist powers intensify their aggression in a bid to maintain hegemony. This is manifested in the intervention of the US, NATO and the EU in the internal affairs of other states, the militarization of zones of interests, including the Pacific Rim, Indian Ocean and Mediterranean Sea.
The key issue that we campaign on in this country, in our country, is the issue of the fact that over 2.5 million US troops have landed in Shannon as they participate in their endless wars. And this is a document on that issue. And it brings together all the different elements of all the different peace movements in Ireland. Now the point about my country is that it was occupied by the British Empire for a long time. And the 6 counties of Northern Ireland have been part, because they're part of what's left of the British Empire, it's not as big as it used to be, is and has been part of NATO since its foundation. The part of the country which is called Ireland is allegedly neutral. But of course, with 2.5 million and more US troops landing in Shannon, I think it's normally called the USS Aircraft Carrier Ireland.
Italia, por su posición geoestratégica, es como una portaaviones en el centro del mar Mediterráneo.
Italy, from its geographical location, is like an unsinkable aircraft carrier in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea.
Entre los planes de los Estados Unidos y de la OTAN, Italia es decisiva para la guerra en el Oriente Medio, en el norte de África, y también fue decisiva en la guerra contra la Yugoslavia.
In the framework of the US and NATO plans for the region, Italy was a decisive supporter in the plans and wars in the Middle East, in North Africa, and earlier also in the aggression against Yugoslavia.
Most smaller member countries of NATO are increasingly dependent from the US international policy. It is clearly visible in Poland and Baltic states. Decisions of the last year's NATO summit in Warsaw were a clear mark of such tendency. The main decision made in Warsaw was to prepare the US military bases in Poland, Romania and the Baltic countries. The other was the defense budgets of the member states should reach at least 2% of their GDP. Unlike many other changes, these were implemented very quickly. In Poland, there was no debate about them, and all main political parties has reached an agreement on that.
The struggle for peace is at the core of the peace movement, namely in the objectives and actions of the World Peace Council. A pressing struggle that not only through denouncing the imperialist wars of aggression and for the demand of their ends and their conflagration, but that is also urgent in making efforts and forces converge to avoid these aggressions whenever possible. A struggle that naturally stands in solidarity with the right of peoples to resist aggression and oppression. Also in the core principles of World Peace Council is the respect for people's self-determination and for the sovereignty and independence of states, or demand for universal disarmament.
The specific topic, yes, peace, no NATO, like some kind of mathematical principle has been proved in Balkan, in Serbia, for last 20 years. I would like to focus my analysis here in our experience for two reasons. First one would be that we believe that the aggression of NATO against Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, against Serbia in 1999 was a defining moment of creating a new phase of so-called new humanitarian interventionism. The second reason would be that we also believe that NATO aggression against Serbia was a defining moment in creating Balkan as permanent instability region.
Peace Association of Turkey considers the current rift between Erdogan and imperialist countries as real and stays against the theories stating that this harmony is artificial or fake. But we again stay away the theories that the rift could end up with Turkey getting out or to be kicked out of the imperial system. Although the rift is real, both sides never imagined a Turkey without of imperialist camp. Turkey still serves as a hinterland for the US hegemony in the Middle East. Comrades and friends, as you may know, Turkey played a key role in the proxy war against the people of Syria by being a huge jihadi hub, but of course with the consent of the Barack Obama administration. All the statements of US and European officials blaming solely on Turkey for the existence of jihadi groups are untrue. In fact, Turkey supported jihadi groups in Syria under the full consent of NATO countries that passionately worked for regime change in Syria.
UNAC stands for the United National Anti-War Coalition. We are a coalition of anti-war and social justice groups in the United States, about 200 member groups, local groups, regional groups, and national groups. And one very important group within our coalition is the U.S. Peace Council, who we work very closely with. The U.S. Peace Council and UNAC together organized the Hands Off Syria Coalition in the United States. This is an extremely important issue, especially in the United States, because it's very, very misunderstood, the role of the United States. The United States continually says we are fighting the terrorists, but it is another imperialist intervention of the United States, and it has divided the peace movement and the progressive movement, and it is very important that there is in the United States a strong voice that points that out. We have been able to do national tours and demonstrations and meetings and so forth.